Deep Rock Galactic has been in early access for just over 2 years, and on May 13th will leave early access and be marketed as a completed product. Many early access games never reach this milestone. This is usually either because of poor sales performance, shady consumer practices, or lack of passion. What made Deep Rock Galactic different? How did such a small team of developers achieve this task? And what lessons can the rest of the gaming industry learn from them? In this video, I'd like to speculate a little bit and share my thoughts on how Deep Rock Galactic established a foothold for itself within a vast sea of early access failures, and then transcended the stigma of early access. So, sit back, grab a fresh mug of Blackout Stout, and join me as we reflect on Deep Rock Galactic's early access journey. From the very beginning, Deep Rock Galactic established a foundation for itself, an identity. Danger, darkness, dwarves. It's vague, and yet delivers a clear idea on what the game is about. With so much information conveyed in just 3 words, this is a proper motto. Having dwarves as the focus of the game also services the identity of the game.
Rock and stone to the bone.
After all, if you just played as normal people, there would be less of an association with the characters and the actual product. Whereas dwarves narrow things down a little, building associations in the brain, making Deep Rock Galactic more memorable. Even after just hearing the word dwarf, you may then think about Deep Rock Galactic. This is the power of having a strong identity. The dwarves featured in Deep Rock Galactic aren't just generic dwarven men, though. While the stereotypes of dwarves are a massive influence on their identity, they also have a little bit of charm to go with it, acting as a sort of cherry on top. Low poly builds, absurdist voice acting, and charming lines help give personality to the dwarves in such a way as to give the impression that Deep Rock Galactic is a unique experience.
Go, little man, go!
There's even a button entirely dedicated to this, leaving me to believe that there was much more deliberation in this game's identity than we may give the developers credit for.
Extraction commencing. Good work.
There's no doubt that the novel and unforgettable identity of this game assists it with sales and maintaining a healthy player base. It really is nothing other than genius, and thinking about it almost gives me chills. There's another aspect of Deep Rock that has been consistent since the early days: the combat. Harkening back to a more classical era of shooters, Deep Rock's gunplay and movement are closer to Quake and Doom, but still have aspects of more modern shooters sprinkled throughout. There is no aiming down sights in Deep Rock, no hiding for cover to regenerate a small health pool. Nope. In Deep Rock Galactic, moving and shooting blend together. It's fast, simple, and intuitive, but it still has a nuance in the form of more modern gameplay components, creating the potential for a smooth skill curve. Player positioning and player movement have more value in the higher difficulties. Landing weak point shots deals significant damage, saving chunks of ammo. Calling resupplies at appropriate times and at appropriate locations is only something you start to think about well into the game, but it's not something that strikes the player as immediately obvious. Mastery of these mechanics is very rewarding, and the transition into these meta-games is made more smooth thanks to the simplicity of the core mechanics. At no point does the game force you to play at a higher level. Instead, the game waits for you to make that decision yourself, leaving plenty of legroom for multiple types of players. Allowing such a broad spectrum of gameplay while maintaining a strong richness throughout would not be possible without a stable and well-identified combat loop. But combat only serves as a portion of Deep Rock Galactic's foundational core. Exploration is another core strength of Deep Rock. Procedural generation ensures that there is never any lack of content to be explored. Mission objectives, ammo, and minerals tied to player progression incentivize players to search every nook and cranny of each cave they find themselves in. The environments can often be chaotic and difficult to navigate, but each of the 4 dwarven characters have tools at their disposal to circumvent these challenges. Environmental puzzle solving is a gameplay loop all on its own, and blends seamlessly with the combat loop. The concoction created by the intermingling of Deep Rock Galactic's 3 core components, identity, combat, and exploration, acted as a heavy force to stabilize and establish a position amongst all the other early access games on Steam. Despite a lack of any sort of meaningful marketing campaign, the mere content within the game was enough to catch attention and maintain a player base, even in the early stages of development. That is because this foundation remained true throughout the publicly available early access stages. It's a very healthy foundation at that, and wouldn't have been successful if it didn't facilitate further expansion of content and support other gameplay mechanics such as environmental deviations and intricate progression systems, both of which maintain a relationship wherein both the foundational core of the gameplay is enriched by the additional mechanics, and the additional mechanics are enriched by the foundational core of the gameplay. It's a healthy transactional loop, where each interaction between components of the game act to benefit the overall experience. That's the consequence of a competent developer vision, which is something you often see an egregious lack of in most AAA games, let alone early access games. When it comes down to it, this competent developer vision is a manifestation of sincerity, and any player that plays this game will immediately detect that, consciously or otherwise. In other words, it's clear that Ghost Ship Games wanted to make a cool game that was fun to play, genuinely, with no strings attached. Nowhere will you find any sort of anti-consumer practices, even in places that you would certainly expect them to be. The forage system in this game acts as an in-game progression system. It's a slow drip feed of content, entirely the result of RNG. Such traits often give gamers flashbacks of player exploitation in the form of loot boxes, but you cannot make any such in-game purchases here. It is just a means to incentivize players to come back every week. So, would Deep Rock Galactic have been so successful if it wasn't a sincerely developed game? That's a very difficult question to answer, because in order to imagine such a scenario, you'd have to imagine a product entirely different from the one we have. A product with no identity, no meaningful combat loop, no meaningful exploration, no competence, and a likely implementation of anti-consumer practices. Pair all of those negative traits with the fact that Deep Rock Galactic has almost no marketing, and I think you'd be looking at a recipe for disaster. By the way, Coffee Stain Studios really needs to step up and market this game. That's usually the job of the publisher, and we're not seeing that. We're not seeing much marketing at all. Throughout the early access journey of Deep Rock Galactic, Ghost Ship Games maintained a healthy relationship with the community, always taking in constructive criticism and new ideas and listening to the player base. That means dealing with trolls, naivety, people who don't understand the developer vision, which isn't to say I do by any means, and all that extra baggage. It certainly isn't the path of least resistance to listen to community feedback. It's far easier to do what you want regardless. But with the assistance of community feedback, Ghost Ship Games actively adjusted weapon balance, difficulty modifiers, and even implemented entirely new enemies to combat specific playstyles. There's an absurd amount of things that I'm not even mentioning here, like bug fixes and player customization. If I were to list them all, this would be an hour-long video, and I don't want to edit that. Now that Deep Rock Galactic is coming out of early access and into a full 1.0 release, what should we expect in the future? Well, it seems their focus will be going towards increasing mission variety. This is actually a common complaint, that there aren't enough mission types to keep people interested, so this is no surprise. So, just to summarize, Deep Rock Galactic was an early access success despite lackluster marketing, essentially because the content of the game spoke for itself and resonated with its audience. Its legacy should act as an example of early access done correctly. Not even just early access though. Ghost Ship Games handles game development better than many AAA studios. This may be because of corporate ineptitude, but just look at some of the games produced by the most lucrative studios. Bethesda's Fallout 76 was an absolute catastrophe, in so many ways that you couldn't even hope to list them. Many of the modern Call of Duty games lack anything more than basic weapon balance or map design, and are drizzled with anti-consumer practices. Anything published by Electronic Arts ends up despised by the gaming community, with very few exceptions, and many times the development studios purchased by them are brought to their demise by the incompetence of the publisher's influence over them. In an age where capitalistic enterprise is overemphasized in the gaming industry, Deep Rock Galactic is a diamond in the rough, so to speak. What's so unfortunate is it's really easy not to give it a second thought. Video games like this don't come often, And people do recognize that to some degree, hence the success of Deep Rock Galactic in early access, but seeing something like this in 2020 should be celebrated even more so. Perhaps speaking with your wallet is enough, but even just verbal positivity to something that deserves it can go a long way in preserving those values throughout time. Deep Rock Galactic is a prime candidate to be acknowledged in all sorts of articles. Pro-consumerism, co-op gameplay, and early access success, just to name a few notable accomplishments. All I'm saying is if I were a games journalist, I would be having a field day with Deep Rock Galactic. So, cheers to the full release of Deep Rock Galactic, and cheers to its early access success. That's a very difficult sentence to say, by the way. Thanks for watching this video to the end. If you enjoyed this classic commentary, please leave a like and maybe subscribe. I'm a small channel, so all support goes a long way in keeping me motivated to provide content. If you'd like to share your thoughts, please feel free to do so in the comments below. I read every single comment, and not to mention, comments indicate to YouTube that this video is engaging, and it may be recommended to other people who might enjoy it. So, thanks again, and peace out.